Welcome back to Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. This one is entitled 1 Hour Labor. 1 Hour Labor. So this was going back to, we gotta say, let's see, 97, 98. Let's say around 1999 to maybe the year 2000, sometime. I had my old 81 Chevy. And I was in college, and I would drive that car to college every day, and then to the two jobs that I had every day as well. I was either in the parking lot at college or, yeah, I think I was in the parking lot at college or something, and I was about to leave, and I stepped on the brake pedal. This car did not have power brakes. It was a manual brake cylinder. It's exactly the same as what's used today. Brake master cylinder, and the pedal pushes a plunger in it, which forces hydraulic fluid down to the brake calipers or wheel cylinders and squeezes the brakes against either the drums or the discs to apply friction and stop the car. It's exactly the same principle. Power brakes refers to the fact that you have a vacuum booster, an engine vacuum booster, which assists you, otherwise known as power assist brakes, and it would assist you in pressing the brake pedal. We got Barky, but that's great. We're just going to have to deal with it because nobody gives a shit. That's why people should not own animals if they don't handle them. But anyway, back to the brake master cylinder. We didn't have power brakes in that one, so it was all manual. That means that you'd step on the brakes and it would work, and it would work fine. You just had to press a lot harder on the brakes for them to work. And a lot harder means a lot harder. You had to really stand on this guy. The vacuum assist really works and makes that pedal real nice and soft and easy to press. But this was manual brakes. It was a cheap car, and that's what it had. Nowadays, you can't get a car practically without power assist brakes. Anyways, that's what it had. So manual brakes, and there I was, and I stepped on the brake, and the brake felt all right, but I went to go, and I wasn't stopping right. In other words, I was going, and up ahead, fortunately, nothing happened. Up ahead was a light that was green that just turned yellow, and I got some distance before I'm getting to it yet. But obviously, I had to stop because it was going red. So you start slowly pressing on the brake pedal. And I started slowly pressing on the brake pedal, and it went right down to the floor. And I was not stopping. So you say, that's not good. Oh shit, what do I do? So you start jabbing the brake pedal. Well, fortunately, I was jabbing the brake pedal, and that worked. So there was a problem with the master cylinder in the car, is what we determined, because there were no, plenty of brake fluid in there in both chambers, because it was a dual system, as they have been for many years. So there was plenty of brake fluid in there. There wasn't air in the lines because it wasn't open to the atmosphere. There was no brake work done on it. The pads and brake shoes were not worn. Plenty of meat on it, and it just worked, earlier that day just fine. They don't just quit suddenly like that. And going home was pretty dicey because in order to stop, I had to panic brake and like jab on the brakes and kind of bounce off of them to slow myself until finally I would stop. So it was dicey getting home. Well, anyways, that was that, and it was time to fix it. So my dad went, and at this time, sorry for the planes, but it's outside. My dad went to the local auto parts store, US 1 Auto Parts, maybe it was called. I can't remember. Auto Barn, maybe. That's what we had. Went there and said I need a brake master cylinder for an 81 Chevy Citation, non-power. And he got it. And brought it home. And my dad replaced the master cylinder. When you do that, you introduce air into the lines. So now we had to jack up the car at each wheel and open the bleeder screw and start pumping fluid through until there are no more bubbles in it. And that way you get the air out of the lines. And the reason you do that is air is highly compressible. The pedal only moves so much. If you have a lot of air in there and you step on that pedal, which only has a certain amount of travel, you compress that air real well, but you don't move the fluid to force the wheel cylinders out or squeeze the calipers together or anything like that. And you have very poor brakes, if any. So you have to bleed it. Well, he tried bleeding it, and there I was, pedal up, pedal down, pedal up, pedal down, the whole thing. And he'd open and close the bleeder screws, and we're playing with this. So finally my dad says, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I keep getting air out of this thing. So we're going to have to bring the car to the mechanic. So we brought the car to the mechanic the next day. And my dad told the guy, now you got to understand the kind of place this is. This is like the place I go to with Julio. This place will install parts you bring him. He'll charge you an honest price and won't rape you on stuff. He did good work. He really did good work, and he charged a fair price for it. This was one of those times where he charged an exceptionally fair price for it. We show up with the car. We went just in that car. My dad drove it, and he was, you know, real careful with the brakes, and we went slow, and we got there, and that was that. So he said, hey, the car is had a bad brake master cylinder, so I replaced it, and I'm trying to bleed it with my son, and we keep getting air out. We can't bleed it. And he says, all right, I can do it. So he has us wait, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. Pretty much whenever we would show up, he'd always magically take us right in. I don't know how that worked, but he did. So anyway, he took the car in, and he put it up on the lift, and he got a helper guy, and he's standing up on the lift, underneath, rather, the car, working on the bleeder screws. And he says, up, down, you know, he's yelling out to the guy, and he's doing the thing. And he's trying and trying and trying and trying and trying to bleed this, and it's not bleeding. There still is more and more and more air. So the next thing is the car is lowered back down to the ground. And he says, I have to bench bleed this. And he dismounted the master cylinder, brought it over to his workbench, clamped it in a vise, and started working it to try to bench bleed it, where you bleed the air out of that and have it kind of loop the fluid back into the master cylinder. And you do that while it's open to the atmosphere, so the air just goes out. So he probably, for the better part of 45 minutes, tried bleeding it on the ground. Another 15 minutes, easy, trying to bench bleed it. And he kept getting air in bench bleeding this. When you bench bleed it, you rule out all of the brake lines and wheel cylinders, calipers, everything on the car, because none of that is connected, and you're just looping these lines right back in, so it's kind of like an open but closed loop. It falls back in on itself, and the air simply escapes. Well, this wasn't bench bleeding. So he comes back out, and he says, you put this master cylinder on? Yeah. And this is a new one. Well, yeah. Where did you get it from? US 1 Auto Parts down the block. And he says, okay, your master cylinder is bad. The one they gave you that's new is no good. That was his determination. So he said, I'm going to take it and give it to you, bring it back to them, get another one. So my dad said, okay, the only problem is, this is the only car we brought. I can't, this would never happen today. The guy said, okay, hold on a minute. And he goes in his office, and he comes back out with car keys. And he says, take that gray car over there, bring your master cylinder, come back with a new one. Loaned my father a car off the lot. Now, it was his car, or his, I don't know if it's his personal car, but a car that he owned. It wasn't another customer's car, because, I mean, there's just too much liability in that. But it was a car that he owned. He also sold used cars, and in fact, I bought Old Clanky from him way back in the day. Long story short. So he loaned us a car, which happened to be a 90-something Toyota Corolla. Early 90s, maybe. I don't know. I can't, maybe a 93. I don't know. So it certainly wasn't new, but it wasn't that old. So we drove this little Toyota Corolla down the block, which was like 2 miles, with the master cylinder in the car, and we walk into US 1 Auto Parts, and my dad says, hey, you gave us this thing, and it's no good. I can't bleed it. I need another one. Punches it up in the system. He says, I don't have any, but I can get you one in about an hour. This was before cell phones. Not before cell phones, but we certainly didn't have any. So we couldn't call him. The best we could do is drive back there and tell him, and then go back. I know it's only 2 miles, but my father has this sickness where you can't make a special trip for anything. It always has to be stopping at 74 places along the way. And it was also his gas. Now, again, it's 2 miles back and forth. 2 miles there, 2 miles back. It's not far. At the most, is what it was. But he didn't feel like spending his money or having to put $5 of gas in it or anything like that. So we just waited. Meanwhile, my car, my old Chevy, is in his shop, up on the lift. We're actually down, but it can't be moved because it has no brakes whatsoever, and the parking brake did not work because it was never used over its lifetime, and as the saying goes, use it or lose it. It was never used, so it was lost. And this was an old car when I got it, so it was clearly the previous owners of it. We waited at the auto place for like 45 minutes to an hour. And they finally showed up with the replacement master cylinder, and then we drove back. And the mechanic is like, what the hell took you so long? Well, they didn't have any. We had to wait for the guy to bring it. He says, okay. That was it. He didn't give a shit. But meanwhile, it tied up his bay. This is already an hour of him working on it. An hour of it sitting there that he can't work on other cars. He could have done 3 or 4 oil changes in that time, if that's what was there on the lot to be done, you know? He couldn't work on any other cars in that bay. Yes, he had 3 bays, but usually one had a car that was going to be there for a long time. The other was the inspection bay, and the third was where my car was. So he had his garage, for all intents and purposes, shut down for an hour with my car in there, stuck. Because there was absolutely no way to stop it. Like I said, the parking brake didn't work. You could not stop this vehicle except throwing it in park and letting it grind against the parking pole, possibly breaking it. Now, could you start it and do the drive reverse game? Yeah, probably, but, you know, why are you going to damage a transmission for that when you could get the brakes working and drive it like a car? You know, so anyway, we got the master cylinder, came back, and he said, I'm going to bench bleed this first. And he did. And it bench bled just fine. Then he put it on the car, and it went back up on the lift, and he poured in brake fluid, and he said to the guy, and went underneath with the up, down, up, down, up, down, and it bled fine. And he lets the car down, and let me just get rid of my little paper there because I need 2 hands. He lets the car down. So he bled the brakes for another half hour to 45 minutes. Let the car down, took it out, and the guy smoked. So he reached in his pocket and he took the pack of cigarettes and he went, and he took out a smoke and he lit it, and he says, so what should I charge you? How about 1 hour labor? And my dad said, yep, you got it, no problem. Went there, tied up his bay for 3 hours, loaned us a car, and charged us an hour labor. Fucking amazing place that was. He went out of business because he went back to, he was foreign, I don't know what, West Indies he was from, I don't know him and all the other guys. They did a clutch on my dad's 87 Nissan Sentra, and man, they did a nice job with that. They really did. They did a lot of stuff. And they went out of business, and this is after I got Old Clanky. There's other stories with this place of when I used to get my old Chevy inspected. I forget if I ever told that one, but anyways, he went out of business and moved back to his home country, and that was that. And now we got Julio, and it's in a similar, not so nice area, but he'll take and install whatever parts you give him and stuff like that. Let me just check my little paper here. I have no way of holding it sitting here in this location, just for something different. And that was it. That was the whole story. So yeah, a really fair price and good work, and the brakes worked fantastic after that. So I thank you very much for watching this installment of Old War Stories with Uncle Jay, and I really appreciate it. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.